I was. You've got a pedal board full of mismatched patch cables that are a little spotty from gig to another. You're always hunting for one that's going bad. They don't fit. You can't squeeze enough pedals on your pedal board. That's how I was until I discovered Tour Gear Design's patch cables. They're the smallest patch cables in the game. They're rock solid, extremely dependable, and I love what they make. And now I've partnered with Tour Gear Designs to get you 10% off your order by using the affiliate code down below in the description box. You can get 10% off using code 40WATT, 40WATT, but this deal gets even better. For my Patreon supporters, you actually are eligible for 20% off. You have to register with the same email address you use on Patreon and message the company, say you're one of my Patreon supporters, and you can get 20% off your order with Tour Gear Designs, the best patch cables in the game. This podcast is made possible in part through a partnership with TrueFire. TrueFire is the most comprehensive guitar learning experience on the internet, with over 51,000 guitar lessons from the best educators in the world. It makes TrueFire the #1 most trusted music education resource for guitar players. We as guitar players sometimes get fixated on the gear that we play, and we neglect the skill level that we play. And many of us have a hard time finding instructors locally. TrueFire bridges that gap. You can find my affiliate link below to get 40% off with my code 40WATT of your first purchase through TrueFire. Learn, practice, play, TrueFire. This podcast is made possible by the support of many wonderful people over on Patreon. If you would like to support this show and help make sure it keeps going, you can go over to patreon.com/40wattpodcast, where for as little as $3 a month, you can help make sure this show keeps happening. Thank you for all of your support. Good morning, afternoon, evening, or whatever strange time in your part of the world it might be. 40 Watters, welcome to this week's episode. Super excited to have you on board. Gonna get into the podcast pretty quickly today. We're not gonna waste too much time, but I do have to do a couple of housekeeping things at the very top of the show. First of all, I want to thank my Patreon supporters. Y'all make this possible. I was just joking with Zach here at the top of the episode that I can still say all of your names in a thank you at the beginning. Although, someday that might become an issue. I might have to come up with some other way to shout y'all out. But I'm going to thank every single one of my active Patreon supporters at the top of the show because I appreciate all of you so much. So, without further ado, Tony DeGraw, Steve Rao of the 60 Cycle Hum podcast, Andrew Bimson, Abe Matthews, Jordan Galash, Duncan Watson, Andy Johns, David Evangelista of the Guitar Dads podcast, Blake Jefferson, Nick Call, Andrew Hensley, Alan Gresham, Dan Pilver of Lewitt Audio, Scott Hamilton of the Effects Loop podcast, Andy Koning, Jim Burns, Tom Kelly, Heath Batt, Ben Fair of Electromotive Sound Co., Rick Calhoun of Honey Picks, Jeffrey Walks, and Kyle Harris. Thank all of you so much for supporting this podcast. You literally make this possible. And I really greatly appreciate it. So having done all of that, we're going to get right into this episode because we've already started talking before we started airing. This week I have, as I've jokingly said in the Discord for this podcast, I said this week I have the man, the mythos, the legend, Zach.
It's me.
Yeah, how you doing, brother?
I'm good. I'm everywhere. It's too much.
Yeah, dude, you're like hyper busy. So just in the last because we chat like fairly regularly at this point. I feel like we text or you called me the other day and we were talking because you were driving somewhere and we were gonna chat. And you're everywhere. You're like you were on this week. You were on the Guitar Knobs podcast. Mm-hmm. You've also got 2 podcasts of your own between Pedal Pushers and Dipped in Tone. You find time somewhere to make pedals and you also hanging out with Adam Savage in Indianapolis while dressed as a Ghostbuster. Dragged your kid kicking and screaming to Disney. I mean, I'm actually not really kidding too much. Apparently, you liked it way more than the kid did. But
yeah. So he was not a fan.
That's so weird to me. I've actually never been to Disney.
I love it, but
see, I was having this conversation the other day. I've never been. Mm-hmm. But I've been on the outskirts because they do a lot of show choir competitions down in Orlando in the hotel and convention centers. Sure. So I've played guitar for the show choirs that'll go down there and compete in these things. And so I'm like, hey, this is a okay hotel.
Yeah, well, yeah, the hotels are great.
Yeah. No, I went into the little like shopping village that's right outside of Disney. It's not in the park proper.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I've seen of Disney.
Yeah,
That's what I know.
that place is cool. Like Disney Springs, I think
Yes,
is what it's
Disney
called.
Springs. That's it. So went there, hung out, had dinner. It was rad. I wanted to buy a lot of stuff over in the Star Wars store. Um,
Yes. Yeah,
so
it was fun.
yeah, well, having said all that, it's finding a really good kicking off point because we've talked about a bunch of stuff here. Let's because I don't have to do the who are you because you've been on the show before. Y'all can go back
Right.
and listen to that and what he's doing. Um, got some Patreon questions that are going to be coming, but in the meantime, let's talk about how do you find all this time? Are you losing your mind?
Yeah. Uh Absolutely. Um I just so I really like being busy. I
Mm-hmm.
think like I'm not a um like sit around and relax and not do anything kind of person. That is the complete antithesis of who I am. Relaxing to me is doing something for myself or doing something for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Um and not just like like going to a beach and sitting on a towel and not doing anything is a nightmare to me.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun to me either.
Right. So I love move. I always say to my wife, I love moving the needle. Like, really move the needle today. And that's kind of just how I approach everything. But um I'm also a big planner. So a lot of these things that have happened have been uh all the big things. It's just like,
Sure.
this is a lot of preparation. Because I'm just I like having a calendar and a plan and knowing where I have to be and all that stuff. So
Yeah, I'm a dramatic person, so that's why I piled all those things all together at once and made them
uh-huh.
sound like they were all happening at once because it sounds more dramatic that way.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things when you are someone who doesn't sit still well, which
Mhm.
I'm also. It drives my wife crazy. She wants to go see a movie or watch a movie. I'm like, I can't sit down for 2.5 hours.
Right. Yeah.
I can't do it. I have something else I want to be doing. Or we do sit down and like 45 minutes in, I'm like on my phone, checking email, doing other things. I don't sit still well either. Beach sounds terrible. I'm a mountains person.
Right.
Um, so it's one when you finally stop, if you can ever find that moment to pause, and sometimes it's someone else having to point it out to look
Mm.
back and say, you realize that in the last like 8 weeks you've done, and then list all the things, and you're like, huh, I didn't feel like I was that busy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I every day I feel like I accomplished nothing, and then
Right.
I'll say what I did, and my wife or Matthew or somebody's like, hey, that was a lot actually, like you know um and I realized I need to start being a little easier on myself the other day because my wife and I were just sitting on the couch like talking, and she was just looking at me and she's like, your mustache is turning white. Because my beard has been turning white for a couple of years, but she said, hey, we got to figure this out because you're gonna like put yourself in an early grave if you don't stop this. So
Yeah, stress, man. Stress is bad.
oh yeah.
Stress is rough. Mine's a little shaggier than I'd like it to be. Might get some beard care tips while we're here.
Okay.
But I've got this gray patch that's gotten bigger, and now if it really grows out, it's starting to get real white, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about it. I'm not gonna do anything about it. Like I'm not that guy though. That's who
No.
I am. It's like I'm just gonna leave it.
I remember when I was younger, I thought, oh, it's gonna be so cool to have white hair and like my hair to start getting a little salt and pepper, and then like my chin just turned white. And I thought, oh no! And now my temples, I'm gonna look like um, Mr. Fantastic from the Fantastic
Yeah.
Four. Just have like the silver right there. Um, and my mom has a streak just like right on her forehead, just a gray streak going back, and it's
Wow.
all gonna hit me like that. And everyone thinks, I always say like, yeah, it's probably 42, maybe. I
Mm-hmm.
think I'll be pretty salt and pepper, and they're like, nah, like this happened in like 2 years. So,
Man.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I
I'm a
feel it.
heavy stressor, but I've always been that way, and so
I
having a
gotcha.
business is like, I don't know, it seems counterintuitive for my personality, but also I don't work well for other people. I'm too strong-willed and combative and things like that. So
I feel that. Although, in my day job, I do have a board that's over me, but at the same
Mhm.
time, it's like I'm the boss, like on the premises, and like I could
Right,
not imagine working with for me. And that's
right,
not saying I'm not a, I think a decent boss. I'm pretty compassionate, understanding. I'm pretty easygoing, but I just working for someone in general where. When you're in charge, you get to have an idea and be like, no, we're going to do this. This is going to be awesome.
right. Yeah. Yeah, it's different. And like managing people for me is like really hard because I'm not
Yeah.
confrontational, but I am like, I don't know. It's weird. Like I was thinking back about my days at Carter Vintage, and when John and I were doing YouTube stuff, Christy would come to us with ideas or people that she'd want to do, and John would be like, I don't know, and I'd say, no, we're not doing that. Which is just funny because I'm like I'm not that kind of person, but I'm also I dig my heels in a lot. So,
Yeah.
but
Well,
yeah,
you got to be that kind of person. But I don't think you give yourself enough credit. But so since the last time we talked, though, Mythos has
mhm,
gone through some massive changes. To get put
yeah.
in perspective, the last time we talked, you hadn't even. I don't think you'd even moved in with Novo at that time.
And I think I was I think I was still at the house in the
Yeah.
garage probably.
Yep, you were still in the garage. I remember because I asked you about the rack you had behind you. And I was like, "Oh,
Oh,
that's boxes of this." And so yeah, you've since we last talked, you've been at this is your third location, second new location.
right.
Yeah, and you've hired on someone to help in the form of Matthew.
That's right,
Um,
Matthew Timmons.
yeah, which I will tell you, just as an outsider looking in, it's done really good things for y'all's social media presence, some of the put together of things, giving you some time to do some things you wanted to do.
Sure, yeah. It's like hiring because so he was the Novo general manager, wanted to
Sure.
make a change, and because they were just growing and it just made more of a sense for him and what he wanted just personally to be with a small team. And he and I had become such good friends, and we're so excited about all things guitar that it just made more sense. Not necessarily financially, because we're not at their level yet, but
Right.
hopefully one day. But um, it's been really good. It's also stressful because in addition to having that sense of weight relief, like someone helping me with all these things, it's also like, oh, I have to make sure that he has something to do because he's like, it's a big job, and I'm trying to take care of the guys accordingly, and so I don't want any wasted time, but also I don't want to be a jerk. But it's like it's an interesting thing, but it has been a huge help, definitely in my mental state, just to not have to like go, oh, I have to make that UPS label, or oh, I didn't send all these invoices, or oh my gosh, how's the inventory looking? It
Right.
like he takes care of most of that, which is definitely a really good thing for me.
And so you're up to how many folks you got working there at Mythos now?
We just lost one.
Oh, that's
McKinley,
unfortunate.
one of our builders, he decided to go full time at Carter. He was working like part time there, and they
Oh
made him
wow.
a really good offer. Yeah, and it's better, I think, for him because um, the tedium of making pedals is not for everybody.
Yeah.
And he was a hard worker and a good guy, but I think like the randomness of like a vintage guitar store in Nashville is like it's exciting. Like I liked it,
Hey, that's
so
super exciting.
yeah, so it's doing good for him. So we just have three now. We did have four,
Hmm.
but when before we moved, we had worked like for at least a month building up inventory of everything because like it
Yeah.
was a bit of a lull, like a pre-holiday lull, and I said, okay, 100 of everything on the shelf, and so we just made everything, and then when we moved here, it's just been just refilling the top unless there's a new launch, but it's not been as stressful or as busy
Yeah.
seeming because we made so much stuff. I just ordered a ton of parts and it's like let's just make it. So it was we're okay right now with that number of people, but we definitely will have to hire someone
Yeah.
soon.
And when you get ready for a move too, that's a great thing to have because you don't know how long it's going to be before you're back up to 100% operation
Oh
in a
yeah.
move. You're still figuring out the space because I know you say you're a planner, but as much as you plan in a move, you get in the space and then you're like, oh, that's not going to work for this reason or that, and
Oh
you have
yeah.
to move things around. And
yeah, we set up the shop, and I said, I'm going to put the shipping table over here, and I'm going to put this over there. And then I put the shipping table over there, and I plugged into the outlet on the wall, and it didn't work. I was like, okay. So we just have an extension cord like go in for the print. It's just a printer. I just need a printer to print labels, but it's
Yeah.
like, so, yeah. But that was a big part of it. Like we didn't know how long we'd be down, and it's easier to move a pedal built in a box than a loose box, an enclosure, knobs. Like, if we can
Yeah.
consolidate all that into one little rectangle, that's great. And
Yeah,
so that
that's
was a big
much
part of
simpler.
it too.
Yeah, I can't imagine the mess and the potential for disaster in that
Oh,
kind of a move too.
yeah. Like, I mean, I have like just pots alone, we have, thousands, and knobs. There was like a scare in maybe 2021, late 2021.
Hmm.
One of the biggest suppliers of um, knobs and parts in general for most do-it-yourselfers. Uh, I found out through the grapevine, because I have birds everywhere, um, that they were gonna shut down, and I was like, oh no, like that's the place I get this and this and this and this. And my guy said you should probably just buy them, and so I bought like 17,000 knobs or something. Like I bought, I mean, it was this, or maybe it might have been more than that. I spent just an obscene amount of money because I thought, A, I don't want to run out,
Right.
and B, um, like even if I could find them, if I'm buying them at this quantity, I'm going to get such a good price break that it'd be stupid not to do this.
That's a good, but yeah, that's a real good point. Especially, combination that quantity going out of business.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
oddly enough, they didn't, but I mean, like they did sell,
Yeah.
but we all thought, oh, they're going to close, and we're all going to have to buy knobs direct from manufacturers, which is a nightmare. It's oddly enough, it's really easy to do from overseas, but a lot of the knobs that I use are made in like Chicago. So
Okay.
it's really hard to get in touch with them and say, okay, I need X number of this and that, and they'll say, okay, it costs this much, and then you look at this other part supplier's website, and you're like, well, theirs is cheaper, and like, yeah, because they buy 20,000 or something. You're like, oh
Right.
gosh, so
Exactly.
it's a headache. But yeah, we got a ton of stuff in this building, in this new building.
Yeah, no, I dig it. And sort of to transition here the conversation a little bit, because I actually think I know the supplier you're talking about, because I remember when that happened, and then it
Small bear.
sold, and yeah, Small Bear, they stayed open, so they're
Hmm.
still doing the thing, but there
Yep.
was that scare for a lot of people.
Yes.
Because I'm in some Discord servers with other builders and whatnot, and I remember when that happened, there was like instant chatter,
Yeah.
like instant, oh
And
crap.
now they all know that I bought all their knobs.
That's true. They all do.
Yeah.
Because actually, to be honest, I've discovered, so this is still a pretty middling podcast. I'm not as small as I once was, but I'm sort
Hmm.
of occupying that middle space in the guitar. But I've discovered that I have a lot of less guitar players and more guitar builders, and
Mm,
pedal makers and amp builders who listen to the podcast. And it
sure.
blows me away every time I go to message someone to come on the podcast. I'm like, oh, that'd be awesome. I listen to your show all the time. I'm like, you what?
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
now they will all know. That's all I'm really saying, is now
Yeah.
they will know.
Yeah. Like we're the only crazy people that have the time to like sit and listen to these sort of things, because we're like
That's true.
making stuff and like, well, yeah. But I don't. It's so funny. Like as many podcasts as I've done and as I have and have been a part of, I don't listen to them at all, because my drive now is pretty short, and
Oh
like I
yeah.
don't know. I need a separation when I'm not um, doing work. I like when I mean I listen to a lot of music, but
Yeah.
my interests outside of guitar are pretty vastly different, and so that helps me like kind of turn my brain off and not uh just obsess as much
Right.
as I do. I don't know.
Most of the podcast listening I do now is still in the music realm, but it's more music podcasts
Sure.
than it is like gear podcasts, because, and this is going to transition perfectly again because my ADHD stopped me from transitioning earlier, but um it's that I like listening to stories about music. I like listening to songs, and I listen to things like there's a really fun podcast called Switched on Pop.
Okay.
That's a songwriter and a musicologist, where they talk about pop music and they talk about the history of it, and they'll do deep dives on like they did a multi-part series for the I'm going to get this wrong, and my music history professor would be so mad at me. But it's for like the 250th anniversary of Mozart's fifth, or maybe it was the 200th anniversary. Anyway, it was like last year or a year before last, and they did this big 5-part series where they dissected how that symphony changed classical music, not just in the music, but in the way people went to hear classical music.
Sure.
Like, and it's I'm not gonna give away any of the secret spoiler alerts, any of those kind of things. You can go listen to it, but it's really, really fascinating. So
Yeah.
those are the kinds of things I love to listen to.
He was a rock star.
Oh, absolutely, a rock
People
star.
don't think about that.
Absolutely a rock star. And it was that symphony that started to change the excuse me, y'all. It started to change the demographic of people that went to classical concerts. Yeah. And actually that was when like some of the more formal attire, the way people started turning into this like black tie event.
Right.
And a lot of that was started during that time period as a way to keep the lower class and the less desirables out of the classical music hall.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating stuff. Anyway, so, but talking about, music over listening about gear and, like you were saying, too much stuff. Yeah. We've been texting back and forth about this concept of too much stuff.
I got it. I got too much stuff.
Yeah, me too, man. And it's because in fact I was told you're selling a Firebird right now.
A 1965, yeah.
Yeah, you're selling a 65 Firebird. And one of the questions that one of the Discord listeners told me to ask is, why would he ever sell that amazing guitar? Too much stuff.
Too much stuff. And really, I mean, honestly, I got a really good deal on it. And I
at a Guitar Center, no less.
At a Guitar Center in Kansas, which is so weird. But I don't know. I love it. It's a great guitar, and I think probably down the road I'll go, I shouldn't have sold that. But ultimately, I got a crazy deal on it. I want to sell it because there are just so many more things in my life that are more important to me right now, and more that will give me a little bit more fulfillment. Sure. If I turn it into something else, and I don't have to, like, I don't know if I held on to it for another 10 years or something, it would probably go up in value. I don't think it's going to be as exponential as some other gear that in the past couple years has done, but I just don't need this much stuff. And I'm going through a bit. I was calling it my gear life crisis. I've been calling it that on pedal pushers. And then I was looking at my wife the other night, we were having dinner, and I was like, wait, am I having a midlife crisis? And she said, yeah. Because I want a fast car. I want like a 2-seater coupe. And like, I want like a fancy watch and like all this like stupid stuff that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I see all these guitars and I have so many and I can't enjoy them. You can only play one at a time, and I get that. Yeah. But there are a lot that I have that I just don't play. And if I can parlay that into something that will excite me or will bring my family joy, then it's just more important to me right now. And I do this. I mean, I talk about it all the time, and I'm not exaggerating. Every day I think about it. I have my Klon on a shelf at home. It's in our den. And I walk by it every day. Because it's cool. I can get away with that one,
Yeah.
It's books, Klon. But I walk by it every day.
Kind of classy looking.
No, it's cool. And I think I should sell that thing. But I don't know. And then, I don't know. In the back of my mind, I think my wife would kill me, and all my friends would kill me because I got a good deal on it. And well, I mean, compared to what they're selling for now, I got a good deal on it. But
the term "good deal" is always relative.
Yeah,
always relative.
I bought mine for $1,500, which is stupid. But now they're like $3 or $4 grand easy.
Which is down, if we're honest. That's actually down a little bit.
Gold ones. There was a gold one that sold on Reverb for like 10 grand. I was at a guitar event. We were having an event at a store, and somebody one of the workers was like, Zach, that someone just sold a Klon for $10,000. I'm like, get out of here. But I don't know. But there's just a part of me that sees it and goes, I've used it, I've learned from it. I don't know if I need it.
Yeah.
And it's a weird headspace to be in. And I think about that with a lot of my stuff. Now, a lot of it is too sentimental and I can't let it go.
Sure.
But every now and again, I'll pull everything out and I'll just kind of look at it and go, I don't need that. I'm gonna keep that. I don't need that. But this is something that everyone goes through. But it feels weird when like I just went on a bender buying stuff.
Mm-hmm.
During COVID, Mythos just went, and I saved and saved and saved and saved like everything, saved all my money, and so I just had like this like fun fund, and I thought, you
Right.
know what, I'm gonna get all these things I've always wanted, and then I started doing that, and then going like, what the hell am I doing, um, but yeah, I that was a very long answer. I'm sorry.
No, that's perfect. That makes for great podcasting.
Okay.
For me, it's a similar thing. COVID hit. I didn't have to drive to work anymore.
Oh
There's
yeah.
there's just gas money alone I'm saving.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I drive that far to work, but still,
Oh,
there was a lot of little things that piled up.
like $40 a week or something. It's like,
Yeah. Couldn't go out to eat anymore, so
yeah,
making everything at home, saving money there.
yeah,
Of course, my wife also wasn't driving to work, and she doesn't have any expensive hobbies, so I was saving all of her gas money for gear too.
right.
Um, so
Excellent.
I know, right? Um, but my gear life exploded. On top of that, suddenly, if you got in at the right time, there were some really incredible like things you paid this much for
Mm.
were now selling for this much
Oh
kind
yeah,
of stuff. I had a lot of really killer flips early in the pandemic, right?
sure.
So early in the pandemic, very very early, like maybe before any lockdown, I had sold a deluxe reverb, just a reissue, nothing
Sure.
fancy, right? Sold it on Reverb, shipped it, packed it well, and it still managed to get damaged.
Right.
UPS managed to drop it on the corner, and it separated at the shoulder of the corner, and so issued refund. Guy shipped it back to me. Long story. Well, I got it back, and I looked at it, and I was like, "So okay." Pulled the chassis out and fired it up. It still worked perfectly. There was no damage to the circuit. Everything was great. Speaker was good. Tank was good. I was like, "Okay, the only damage is the cabinet."
Wait, they didn't
Right?
keep it?
No, well, here's the deal. No,
Huh? They've always
I,
kept my damaged stuff.
oh, I never got any refund for that. They never
Oh,
paid
oh.
me a penny. Yeah,
Ah,
yeah, I didn't get a dime
shysters.
for it. Shysters. So it got shipped back to me, and I ate it.
Mm.
Ate that little bit of a loss. And that was my lesson, by the way. Any of you that sell on Reverb, click the button for the extra insurance because UPS doesn't care about you.
No, no, no.
Click
Yeah.
click that button for that extra. Now Reverb actually did. This is why I continually go to bat for Reverb, right?
Mm.
And even though people want to trash on them a little bit because they don't understand how fees and sales tax work,
Right.
they don't understand what's a fee and what's a charge. Like they don't
Yeah,
get
yeah.
it. That's a whole other podcast. But Reverb, even though I did not click the extra insurance, they at least spotted me all the shipping, like
Oh, that's
to and
cool.
from. So they spotted that back to me, which they did not have to do, and I really appreciated them doing that.
They got
So
the
I got
money.
it back. I managed the cabinet actually wasn't that bad. It had just basically separated at the glue joints of the cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
So and it tore the Tolex at the corner. So I re-glued it. I put in some thin L brackets on the inside to reinforce it. I got the chassis back in there, and then I love this. And here's a note to y'all: if you use textured nail polish, you can match Tolex almost perfectly.
Uh,
So I did that, and I was like, "Oh, fine, I'll play it. It's no big deal, right?" But then the price on deluxe reverbs and Princeton reverbs
mm-hmm.
started shooting up.
Yep.
And so I was like, well, let's relist it on Reverb, disclose all of these details, like say all of these things, hold nothing back. I sold it damaged for more than I originally shipped it for completely mint.
Yep. It's
And it was
crazy.
wild.
Yeah, I traded a Pro Junior and a it was an old one, but it wasn't that old. DoD 250 for my deluxe reverb.
Oh my god.
And the guy was like, I doesn't like this thing. And it was very well played, but I cleaned it up and used some contact cleaner in the tube sockets and all the pots, and like it had stickers all over it, and I just used it wasn't Goo Gone, it was something less abrasive than that. Got all the stickers off, cleaned it up, and it looked pretty good. And then I saw that happening. I'm like, wait, why are deluxe reverbs like $1,000 now? That doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I love mine. I've modded it within an inch of its life, as far as just not within an inch of its life. I have modded it a bunch, and it's I don't know. Like sometimes you get one of the deluxe reverb reissues, and they're like really good, and mine's a really good one for some reason. I don't know. I can't sell it.
I went through a stupid period, and I can talk to you about how stupid this is. And you're a perfect person. Maybe not the perfect. You're one of the perfect people to talk about this with.
I love stupid things.
I went through this time period where, and I'm still sort of there, but where I was like, I don't want any PC board amps, no PCBs, and all hand wired, nothing else. And so I got rid of like all of my PCB amps, which I don't regret. Like I could buy them again. Like they're still readily available, but that was part of why I got rid of it. And I got alternatives, right?
Yeah.
It's like, that's when I discovered the company Tyler amps.
Sure.
And I've got one of his little, the PT, not the PT, JT 14s. That's like little Princeton reverb with a 12-inch speaker style circuit. Love that amp. It's perfect. And it's hand wired and criminally undervalued on the used market.
Yeah. You know what? You know why I think they're kind of undervalued?
Why's that?
They're not super attractive.
Mine is a little better than some of them that I've seen.
Yeah. And I think that, like aesthetics is such a huge part of everything, but it's also the hardest thing to have a logo and a brand identity and a philosophy for how you're going to lay things out, and just like having like cohesive font packages and stuff is some people it doesn't even, it's just right over their head. But for me, like those things, I can't unsee it, and it drives me nuts. Like if I recognize a font, if like that's a free font that I've seen on the internet, I get really annoyed. And even like our Mythos font is a font like I bought and paid for it, and now I see it everywhere. And it drives me nuts. I mean, granted, we like modified mine, and like the M is different, and it has a big tail on it, and we italicized it, and it wasn't, you can't like, there's no like italicize option on our font.
Oh, okay.
And I did all this stuff, and then still I see it and go, that's my font. And it drives me nuts.
It's like when you go car shopping, like I want a blue car. There's no blue cars on the road, and then suddenly you're looking for blue cars, and that's all you see.
Yeah. No one drives Volkswagens. Wait a minute.
Wait a minute. There's Volkswagens everywhere. And so, and you just recently, I guess it was last year, just a little before that, went through a revamp on all of your aesthetics on your pedals.
Yeah, we did it when the Oracle came out, and then it was, I think we were at the Novo space. Yeah. It's hard to remember, but I think it was there. Yeah, it was when I added the boxes, because I know it was there because I have in my storage closet in the shop, there is a case of Mjolnir enclosures that I got, and the font that says Mjolnir is different. And I thought this is going to be it. And I got them, and I opened the box and I went, I hate this.
Oh no.
And I text my enclosure guy, Jacob, and said, hey, we got to go with option B because this one just sucks. And he was like, I kind of liked it. So at some point I'm going to mail those back to him, and he's going to put them on a belt sander and just on the face and just and buzz that off, and we'll do it again.
Okay.
But yeah, we did that. And that was a lot of that was because, I mean, it was all because of the Oracle. I didn't know how to make it look cohesive with the rest of the brand. And in the back of my mind, I was never super happy with the design of all the art. I felt like, it kind of looks like Earthquaker or Walrus, like an early Walrus or something. And I tried really hard to have it be identifiable, but it took a lot of like letting go to get to like this spot. Um,
Right.
and I love how it looks now because I feel like they finally have. There's an homage there to Maxon and Ibanez and stuff with the box and everything, but I feel like finally, if you see it on a pedal board, you go, oh, he's got a Mythos pedal. There's no like question, or she's got a Mythos pedal. Excuse me.
Right.
I feel like it's finally at that point. You know.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I was joking with you yesterday or day before. They all one day to me. But
Yeah.
like I've got several on my pedal board, and like all of them, only one of them is really the new aesthetic, because I've got like the
Mm.
black Herculean, and I've got the
Oh yeah.
Alien Drive, which is a little different than the aesthetic you're using now, because it was a different thing.
Yeah. I mean, like
Um,
that. Some of those, like the Dumble Herc, the D Herc rather,
yeah.
was that was like I designed that just to see if I could sell those things because the Herculean, the V2 with the four knobs,
Yeah.
just never sold. It never sold. Like we sold a handful, and I love it. I think it's so good. But I did the D Herc, and then they sold. Like they sold really well, and
Yeah.
I was like, well, I guess people think it's a Dumbly thing, and it does kind of have that. But I was just trying to be cute. I thought, hey,
Right.
people make Dumble looking things. I'll make one, and like they sold pretty well. Um, but yeah, again, the oh my gosh, the Airlane Drive. That's like the design of that took. That's a a podcast in and of itself.
Right.
But yeah, I finally, it feels good. It's the only downside to doing this, and any builder, any maker of anything that's ever changed their aesthetic can attest to this. It's all well and good after you move on until you see all the old stuff,
Oh
and
yeah.
you get one of two things. You go, hey, is this still you? Or can I get the old art? Like,
Oh.
no, yes, and no.
Yeah.
So
Yes and no. Go unless you go to Reverb, but
please,
please buy new.
please,
Please,
no,
please
no,
buy
no.
for me.
Buy up all the used ones. Get them gone. I would, I would like, I love, I love working with dealers and I love selling things. I love people buying new. That's awesome. But also, very few things get me as excited as,
Uh-huh.
hey, look, look, look. There's only like 4 used pedals on Reverb. Like that's great. Like
Yeah.
get them gone. Then like the excitement starts to build because people go, oh, I can't get it used. So
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
yeah.
And I put out an Instagram reel recently with a baritone through the D Herc, and I was like,
Mm,
this pedal is so criminally underrated.
yeah.
Um,
It's really good.
yeah,
And it's
I
so
like it.
simple.
Yeah, and since you're not making it, I'll tell people, and you can get them for a song on Reverb
Yeah,
as of right now.
they're not super expensive. We are bringing it back eventually.
Oh.
Uh, in a way, I can't say too much. Um, it's going to be similar yet different. And it's my attempt. I've always been really like I dig in my heels and I like when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. I'm one of those things. I'm usually the immovable object. Um, and I'm not gonna do what everyone asked me to do. The community, like, they don't know what's best. It's like, what's what I think. That's what Mythos is about. And I started, we were trying to like, revitalize this Herc thing. And so we busted out all the iterations that I had on the shelf and started
Hmm.
pairing it with other circuits and thinking like, people ask for this more like this or like that. And I just kind of said, you know what? I'm going to work on something that is really truly what the community wants and see what happens because I see everyone else doing it and they're succeeding like crazy. So
Right.
what I just need to let it go. And we're trying to do something. If you can't figure it out from what I've said, then that's fine. But we're
Yeah, I'm
hopefully gonna.
fairly sure I figured it out. I'll ask
Yeah,
you in between episodes. We'll see.
We're gonna release something at some point that should be really cool. But we're working. I mean, like, there's so many things we're working on.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I know you've talked pretty openly about the chorus that's getting really close to ready to go.
Chorus is done. We
Oh,
sorry, as far as the circuit,
yeah, designing it is done.
yeah, like the test enclosures are on their way. Probably this end of the week, maybe first next week,
Oh wow.
and PCBs are done. Where's that? It's not in here. Um, the prototype, I made what's called an audio probe,
Okay.
and it's literally like a guitar cable and a cap on like the hot and a wire and then a ground wire, and you just like clip it inside. You clip the ground to the ground of the
Hmm.
pedal. You run signal through it, and then you take the hot end. The cap decouples voltage, so it's not staticky. Um, but you literally touch it to where the signal's flowing through, and you can listen to it as it moves through the circuit. And
Okay.
I had heard about people saying that, but I never like no one had ever outright said, Zach, you got to make an audio probe and like put it to this. And so I did that and was able to narrow down a few little gremlins that I couldn't chase out. And we finally found it was just a tiny amount of hiss because we added a buffer. Um, because where we put the jacks, because it's top mount,
Yeah.
there was it was close enough to the rate knob or potentiometer to tick when it was off. And
Oh.
it made me, I was like, what is going on? And then I had it open and it was just like ticking, and I put my hand underneath the jack and the tick went away. And I was like, it's just bleeding somehow. It's like it's something is happening. But the odd thing was, if you put a buffer in it
Uh-huh.
or in front of it, there's like a boss,
Yeah.
it goes away. And so we were like, well, guess we're making it buffered bypass. And so it's a buffered bypass pedal, but it fixed that tick, but it added a little noise. So chase the noise out, change some values of parts, and it's quiet. It's not dead quiet.
Yeah.
But it's an analog device. It's gonna have a little in the
Well,
background.
yeah, that's part of the charm.
Yeah.
It's like
Noise
when
is rock and roll.
people make noiseless P90s. I'm like, why? That's part of my song.
Right, yeah.
The noise is
I want
part of
that
it.
hum. Don't even
Right.
pot it or nothing.
Well, you can just stick a bare magnet and wire underneath my pickups. It'll be fine. Just
Yeah,
nothing.
it doesn't even leave a cover. Don't even put pole pieces on it.
Yeah, no, it'd be great. That's a little too much. Sorry, that was a little aggressive. But you've also got, which the one I'm excited about, is the one we were talking about yesterday, the Univibe. I'm so pumped for a Univibe. Your work, yeah, I know that's one's further down the line.
Yeah,
That's more.
that's very
That's
far
not
away.
like, yeah. I love Univibe.
I do too.
I've come back around to it being my favorite modulation
Yeah.
effect again, and so I'm real excited to see what I'm going to convince you to put an expression jack on it though.
Oh
I'm
God.
gonna do
See,
it.
here's the thing. So for all those listening, and that's the one that the most annoying question you can ever ask a pedal builder is after something comes out, people say, "Oh, could you put a thing on it?" Like,
Right.
how do I do? Just want me to drill a hole and run some wires? But the thing about Univibes, and this is the thing that most people might not kind of grasp unless you've dove into what the circuit is doing, the speed uh, control is
Right.
dual ganged, right? It's a dual gang pot, just like the Klon gain control. That's a dual ganged pot, but it's a 100 kc. It's an anti-logarithmic taper, so it's opposite of what most tapers are. So in that,
Okay.
to do an expression control, you have to do it one of two ways. Either you have to get a custom potentiometer made with the right taper and two pots on top of each other. Dual gang means you turn two pots at once. That has like the toothed gear, and like that whole thing has to be part of the pot, which you could do. But if you did that, then you'd have to make every expression controller and nothing else would work with it.
Right.
Or you make it controlled by a microcontroller, where basically what you do is you have a chip that will replace the potentiometer. The schematic sees a potentiometer, but basically what you have is a digital potentiometer that you control with a normal pot. So a normal pot is telling a chip how to move values. And if you do that, then you can use anything. You can use any expression control. And I think that's what Jam does with the retro
Okay.
vibe. Because there's a part of that circuit board, I've opened it up and I'm like, there's a PCB like covering stuff. There's like another PCB like as like a shield.
Yeah.
I'm like, I bet there's a microcontroller in there. Because the speed control is just a single ganged pot. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. In fact,
Yeah.
one of the things that, okay, so Univibes typically operate at really high voltage. Like old ones you plugged into the wall.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
had a transformer. Don't want to do that.
Yeah, so there's a part of me that like, yeah, let's do that. That's the way it's
Oh,
supposed
no.
to be done.
No, well,
It's like, because I've looked at the Sabatius and I've looked at some of the other companies that are out there doing that.
sure.
But then I was like, I'm trying to go minimal pedal board now,
Mhm.
and that thing does not lead itself to minimal pedal board.
No. I had the 67th Deja Vibe ever made.
Whoa.
In the big aluminum box, it had Dymo labels that
I was about
Mike
to say
made.
with the Dymo labels, yeah.
It was amazing. I bought it for $100 at Carter.
Oh my
They
God,
didn't
I hate
know.
you.
And I saw it and I was like, what? I was like, is this price right? And they were like, yeah. I was like, cool, I'll take it. And then a month later, I sold it for $1,000 on Reverb.
I hate you so much right now.
But anyway, all that to say, in lieu of having a cord that goes into the wall,
Yeah.
normally they pump up the voltage to 18 volts, 9 volts, the charge pump, and that I'm not going to do that. It's going to be 18 volts, and I'm sorry,
Okay.
world, but we all have power supplies, and I've
Yeah.
fixed enough Mjolnirs that you guys have blown up.
You know they've got 18
you
volts
got 18
on tap.
on there. And so that was a big thing, because adding all that, you have more potential for noise, but also you if like the protection diode that you have to use will blow like that if you put the wrong voltage to it. And I said, I don't want to have to fix these. So if someone
Right.
puts 9, it won't work. 12, it won't work. Put in 18, there you go, it works. And we'll probably figure out a way to get I've been in contact with some like little power, like single power supply manufacturers, and get a Mythos or at least an 18-volt power supply that we'll include with it. But I just can't. The thought of having to fix more pedals because people put the wrong voltage to it makes me want to not make it at all.
Yeah.
So the rough idea of the Univibe is just like my idealized version of what it should be, which we talked about the Deja Vibe, the mini Deja Vibe. I loved the mini Deja Vibe.
I did too.
I think it is pretty much exactly what it kind of should be. And it's not like too extreme either way. It's just like, well, there it is. And it works really well. And I love the modern mode. So what I would do, what I'm planning on is having a JFET input stage, which gives a little bit more punch. Have the volume knob, have the speed and the depth, and the chorus vibrato switch. And it would be laid out kind of like a Wildwood Mjolnir. But I just I don't know. We made a proto in collaboration with another builder. I made one, kind of worked. He made one, something was off. It would only work when it had everything like really high.
Oh yeah.
And like it just like there was nothing shallow. Like you couldn't do anything subtle. So we're trying to fix all that, because I'm having to let go of a lot of that design work because I just don't have the mental capacity for it. But yeah, it's definitely a circuit that I've been asked for a lot. It's funny, like people ask about the chorus, but 9 times out of 10 people ask about the Univibe, and I'm like, man, I don't know, but this chorus sounds really good though.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I have sort of, and I hope you take this for the compliment that it actually is, but I've sort of had this conversation a few times with a couple of different people when talking just sort of the ethos of your pedals, like the whole like line you've put together. And in a way, I sort of think of like, I don't know, your style, your aesthetic, something, whatever you want, what you're putting together, sort of reminds me of what Mike, an Analog Man, did years ago. It's very similar. It's not going like super wild. It's not, it's very rooted in classic tones, classic sounds,
Sure.
and for the most part, analog circuits.
Hmm.
Um, there's an aesthetic. I don't know. There's a kinship there. Maybe that's what I can say. It's almost like a modern day version of what he was putting together.
Yeah, because I'm an old man trapped in a not quite as old yet man body. Like, and I think that's a big part of it. I love modern music. I love modern guitar playing. I love soundscapes and all the things that you can do with modern stuff and
Hmm.
uh, things that push the envelope. But I just don't play guitar like that. And I think that we need someone in the world of pedals. And this is not like me saying that I am this bastion of good tone and stuff. This we need people that make stuff for people that just want to play guitar. And
Hmm.
that's what Mike, Analog Mike does, and a lot of other people that started this whole thing did. And that's just who I am. And I just want to make things that are usable, intuitive, and really don't have a bad sound in them.
Yeah.
I, 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 if stuff can have a bad sound, and if I can find it, I'll try so hard to dial it out.
And
And
and you
that's
don't
what
need a PhD to operate it.
no, no.
And there are some great pedals out there, some incredible sounding. I had the hologram microcosm for
Mhm.
a hot minute there, and I was like, "This is really fun." If I have like a half hour to refresh myself on how it works every time I use it,
Right.
and it was really fun. I really enjoyed playing it, but I was like, the amount of time it took me to dial in or wrap and it had so many modes that
Yeah.
y'all, I'm going to be real rude, sounded mostly the same to me. They all
Hmm.
sounded good, but they mostly sounded the same to me unless you're really into that glitchy,
Sure.
micro looper thing. That I was like, I need to let this go
You,
because I just lost an hour and a half trying to figure this out that I could have actually like learned something like playing wise
you know
that
what's
that I would use live, that I would actually
right.
play.
You know what's really embarrassing? Like I have the Strymon Deco, right?
Oh yeah.
And I have the little card that shows how to use it taped to the back of it. Because every time I get it out, I'm like, now how do I make a slap echo sound?
Yeah.
And I just feel like an idiot. I have the Boss, the Roland Space Echo thing, and I love it. It's awesome, the big one. And every time I'm messing with it, I'm like, wait, and I have to like pull
This
up,
thing.
yeah, I have to pull up a PDF of the manual. I'm like, how does this work? And I'm just like, it's okay. I always made the joke, snakes and sparklers, the Joe Dirt, like
Yeah.
the fireworks salesman. That's me. And it takes a lot for me to get out, to start playing with my Husker do's, my Husker don'ts, all those different things.
Yeah, this is a loaner, by the way. I
Yeah.
borrowed it. Jason Fuzzmonger, was very kind enough to let me borrow this to see how I felt about it. Because earlier this year, I bought a 201 that needed some
Mhm.
work, and so I nursed it back to health, and love that thing. But I wanted to compare it
Yeah.
to the real deal. I'm still not sure if I wanted to see if the pedal sounded like the 201 or to see if my 201 was finally operating correctly to compare it to the 202. I don't know which I was doing, but either way,
Sure.
I love the 201. The 202 is too much for me. It's going to go back to Jason when I get around to putting it in a box and
I,
sending it back.
I love the way it sounds. I mean, like my favorite delay is really it's like the Oracle or the Maxon 8999.
Hmm.
Like those are my favorites. But like I think it sounds awesome. Like especially in the like I have, let's see, there it is. The Soldano there.
Oh
The
yeah.
SLO30. You put that Boss Space Echo pedal in the loop and it's like, oh man, heaven. It's just riffs and it's arena rock for days. But I can't remember. I have to it's a muscle I have to continually exercise or otherwise it just
Yes.
turns to gray dust.
So I'm gonna go ahead and start ramping us down just a little bit because we're
Sure.
getting ready to go into the Patreon episode here in a moment. But I do have some questions that were asked over in the Discord. I've already asked about the guitar, so we're gonna skip that.
Sure, sure.
Um, but I did have another one that I think is really important, and the reason I've actually stopped us a little earlier than I normally would because I think the answer to this one could be really interesting, and I don't want to have to cut us short on it.
Okay.
So Rick over at Honey Picks
Okay.
has asked the question, and I'm going to find exactly. Um, he said he's currently working 2 jobs, staying up till midnight or 1:30 every morning making picks.
Yeah,
When did you know it was time to go full time?
that's a great question, and
Yeah.
it's interesting because it's the answer will be different for everybody.
Yeah.
Um, for me, we, I mean, it's really boring. We sat down, and I had been using QuickBooks self-employed to track my finances, and like that's the first thing. Anyone that works for yourself, start a bank account that is separate from like everything else in your life. That is
Mm-hmm.
solely for your passion project, your side hustle, whatever it is. Put all the money in there, and then get a self-employed thing. Because A, if you're earning money, you're going to have to pay taxes on it,
Yep.
and B, it's just easier to keep track of where you're actually making money. But
Or if you're losing money.
or if you're hemorrhaging money.
Right.
But anyway, um, just my wife and I sat down and we looked at everything and said, okay, this is my quota. I have to meet X every month to fulfill my part of life in this
Yeah,
family.
yeah. To keep things, bills getting paid,
Yes.
food getting on the table.
And that was, my wife had a good job at the time, and we just said, okay, if I can sell 30 pedals a month,
Mm-hmm.
then I can pay rent, we can pay for our car loan, and pay food and have a little fun, like split between us. And so that was really it. But it kept getting pushed further because we had a family, and then Morgan was just like desperately missing our son. And so I said, look, let's sit and do this again, and decide if you can walk away from your job, and that's a huge thing. But it's really like you just have to take a long, hard look, especially if you have a spouse and like other people that depend on you or count on you, um, to look at your finances and just be honest with yourself and say,
Yeah.
look, is this really viable? Is this worth pursuing in this like way, or do I need to just keep plugging away? And the one thing about all that, and like, is just killing yourself working every night and working till post midnight, past midnight, is it's so unhealthy. And it's something that I did, and I regret it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I know it was a means to an end, but I think, like, if taking the next step in your life, or in your career rather, is going to make your life harder in a negative way, like sometimes hard is good, but if it's going to be a true detriment to your person, don't do it. Just wait. Just let it keep growing naturally, and just keep working without killing yourself, because it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
So
So I gave him my answer, but he asked the question, so I was like, "Well, here's what I would say, but I'll definitely ask it." But it's very similar. You got to take a look at your finances.
yeah.
Can you afford? I said you got to get to a point where you can say, "Okay, the side hustle or whatever you call it can make the money to make the ends meet that I need to make every month." And I added the caveat, I feel like you should also be able to see like there's still upward momentum moving. Like I'm going to
Oh
be able
yeah.
to continue to move this forward. This isn't like I'm not, and which is a hard thing to predict. Let's
Oh
be
yeah.
honest. It's
Yeah.
very hard to predict. But you shouldn't feel like I'm probably at the peak and then decide to quit your day job.
Oh right. Yeah. Now you have to, like, I sometimes, to my own detriment, I always tended to wait to the last moment to do things. Like, I waited to move out of the house. I waited to hire someone. I waited to leave a job. I was, it's a lot of that was stubbornness, but also I was so cautious of the fact that, if I do this too early and the bottom falls out, then what am I going to do? I'm going to have to get another job anyway. So, I mean, all that to say is, you have to take risks. You have to believe in yourself and roll the dice, because no one's going to do it for you.
Yep.
But it has to be an informed decision, and you can't just rely on uh, the ebbs and flows of the industry, because you can never predict them. Trust me. So, yeah, it's a hard one, but I think ultimately you feel it. You know in your gut that this is going to work.
Yeah, I agree. So we're about to head over to the Patreon episode where we are going to talk about after now that we've talked about having too much stuff, we're going to talk about buying new two rocks over on the Discord. We are also going to. So I've been doing this Discord. I literally just started it with Alex from Copper Sound Pedals on last episode.
Cool.
I've been asking this question that I think is really fascinating. It's actually partially inspired by you and Rhett over on Dipped in Tone.
Okay.
Because y'all went into a whole conversation. Or I think it was Dipped in Tone, or maybe it was you and Matthew on. There's too many podcasts. It was definitely you were involved, but it was when you're talking about perfect albums. And I have had this conversation before as well. Like, what's a perfect album? What does it mean? So what I've started doing is asking people, they have to give me 5 perfect albums.
5?
And 5. Yeah, no, I'm going to need 5. Jeez. Well, here's the thing. It's got to be 5 because I've already given mine. I'm not going to give mine every episode. Like,
sure, okay.
They've heard mine. They don't need mine.
All right.
So we're going to talk about perfect albums. We're going to talk about 2-rock amplifiers, and I don't know, maybe talk about this. Literally got the email while we were recording for this new Andy Summers flanger pedal. We're not going to talk about that.
Oh,
I don't care anything
Who's
about
making
flanger. EHX. They're making a new.
Oh,
it's called the Walking on the Moon.
Okay.
Signature flanger.
Color me interested.
I'm just not a flanger guy.
Oh man, flangers are great.
Oh, street price $130.
Dude, EHX, they are giving this stuff away. Them and Robert Keeley, like, y'all are too cheap. You're making us look bad.
Right. All right. Well, Zach, tell people everywhere they can find you. It's all going to be in the links below. So if you're watching this on YouTube, it's down in the description. If you're listening to the podcast, it's in the show notes. That's what it's called.
That's right. You can find me at mythospedals.com or on Instagram at mythospedals. On Threads, I'm everywhere.
Yeah. On YouTube? Doing the YouTube thing?
I'm on YouTube. I'm really trying to do more YouTube. I recorded 3 videos today.
So, oh my gosh, man.
Yeah,
I've still got to record mine for Saturday. Oh. Like, literally, I know. I'm way behind. It's this whole it's not my day job thing, right?
So yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about, man, when you said start a bank account, that was the first thing I did for this podcast that I do not make. I lose money on this podcast, right? Yeah. Mostly because I keep buying gear from the people I have on the podcast. But get that done.
Yes.
So we're going to go over and talk before I distract us again from ending this episode. And we're going to go over to Patreon. Listeners, thank you so much for spending this time with us today, this week. Hope to see you around for next episode. But until then, be good to yourselves, be kind to each other, and make some noise.
Bye-bye.